took us 6 weeks to realize we had never, ever seen each other in the first place. It was a total setup.
It was a total fabrication. I think I said to her, what was it you saw in me? She said, I'd never seen you in my life before.
Hello and welcome to Happy Ever Hull, a new podcast from the University of Hull where we'll be exploring the romantic side of campus with alumni who met their life partners while studying here. In this episode, we're hearing from Diane and Charlie.
So I'm Diane Bamforth, but when I was a student, I was Diane Dunkley, and I came all the way to Hull from Cornwall. I was down in Truro in Cornwall, and it was a really long way in those days for anybody to go to university. Most people kept to the southwest, and I went to study history between 1971 and 74. So, 50 years ago we started. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Charles Bamforth, but usually known as Charlie. I'm from a village called Upholland, which is near Wigan in Lancashire. I crossed the Pennines in 1970 to read biochemistry at Hull. So I did my BSc from 70 to 73, and I stayed and did a PhD in the Department of Biochemistry, as it was then called, in Hull. In fact, a number of years later, I got a third degree from Hull, a DSc, Doctor of Science. So yeah, I got three sets of initials from
Hull.
From Hull. So we both have great affection for the university.
So what made you choose Hull to begin with? Why was Hull one of your choices for universities?
I'll tell you the exact story.
This is a good story.
I have two lives. I'm not only involved in these days in the brewing industry, but I also am a great lover of football, or soccer as they call it over here in the States, and I write about it. But the very first time I went to Hull was to watch my team, Wolverhampton Wanderers, playing Hull City in the FA Cup in 1969. And there's something about it. I mean, I went on the train round to Paragon Station. I probably took the little train that used to go to Boothferry Park from Paragon, and I was enchanted. But I don't know, there's something about it. And so when I made my university applications, I put Hull number one. So you had 6 choices in those days, and Hull was my number one, and luckily it came through.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's amazing that it was just because of a football game.
Yeah.
My story is not nearly so interesting. By the time I applied, I was a year behind Charlie, so by the time I applied, you put down 5 universities, and I only got accepted by Hull. And then I had great A-level results, and all the others missed out. So, but that was the days where you chose your universities. They didn't interview me. I did interview at other universities. They didn't interview me, so I had never been to Hull. There was something about the course. I liked the structure of the course in those days that gave you a lot of choice to choose different areas of history, both British and world history, and I liked the thought of that. And so that's how I ended up there. I had never seen the place. I think my parents were a bit aghast that I was going all the way up to Yorkshire, to the East Coast. But yeah, it worked out okay. We met, actually, it was a sort of blind date. So back in those days, many students used to go to the lawns on a Friday or Saturday night. I think it was, there would be a lawns disco, and people would go to the disco. And I used to go with my friends. Charlie never used to go, or very rarely. Occasionally. And a friend of mine called Sally Gilliard, I'm going to give her the credit, who lived across the hall from me in Clemenson Hall. She said, there's this guy, well, didn't say guy in those days, I think. This boy, it's one of her boyfriend's roommates, saw you, and he'd really, really like to meet you. And I was, I don't know this. And he had the same story, that this girl really wanted to meet him. She'd seen him and she thought he was cute and what happened. So they sort of put us together one I think it was a Saturday evening.
It was February the 12th, 1972.
Oh, well, he remembers.
February the 12th, 1972.
They dragged him along, and then and we sort of met, and then we went out the next night, and that's when the power cut was. But it took us 6 weeks to realize we had never ever seen each other in the first place. It was a total setup.
It was a total fabrication. I think I said to her, "What was it you saw in me?" She said, "I'd never seen you in my life before." I lived on Westbourne Avenue at the time. I was in Diggs in Hull. So I used to walk up to Clemenson Hall and that very first night I was wearing an orange vest and purple trousers. And I had hair down to my shoulders. My sideburns, I could tie them together under my horn rim spectacles, and stinking of cigarettes and beer. But so I was.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
I was one hell of a catch.
Quite 70s, I have to say.
Oh, yeah. Very 70s, very 70s.
Anyway, and so the next night we actually had our first proper date at the Railway Inn in Cottingham, the pub. Close, just across the road from Clemenson Hall.
So do you think your relationship then changed the rest of your university experience after you got together?
Well, speaking for me, it certainly did calm me down a bit. I love to go to the pubs, let's put it that way. And Hull is a beer drinker's paradise. So so Friday, Saturday night, before I met Diane, we would, my friends, we would sort of go from pub to pub in the old town down, White Frigate and Land of Green Ginger and all the famous pubs. And so when I met Diane, I toned down a bit. I became a bit more calmer, let's put it that way. So and so it changed, I mean, I still studied hard and so on,
but even though you did all that sort of things at weekends, you were a real swot. You studied really, really hard.
Well, biochemistry is hard, you got to work hard at it.
Yeah, he studied really hard and then let his hair down at the weekends. But so he changed me to some extent, because as we were coming up to his finals and the next year to mine, he made me study. So he probably changed it to that extent. We were in the library from early in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. We had our particular desk that we liked up on the fifth floor. This is the old Bryn Mawr Johns Library. Yeah. And 40 years later, those desks with that sort of vinyl top were still there. It's amazing. So I think that changed it. Yeah, it probably changed my university experience quite a lot, because going through a lot of it with him, but he really made me study.
And our special treat was to go for a meal. We used to go to a restaurant, it's almost certainly not there anymore, called the Lantern, which was on White Frigate. And it was a Greek restaurant, but we always used to have a steak, a prawn cocktail, steak, the usual, and a half bottle of Matthias Rosé, and it was £5. It was £5, but I really, that was really stretching the budget.
We could do that once a term.
Yeah. So that was a special, but I'll tell you a famous occasion when we decided we would have some dessert as well, and the guy said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, we'll have one banana split and one banana fritter, please. Thank you." And he went away and he came back some while later and he said, "We've only got one banana." So I said, "All right, well, we'll have the banana split and just an ice cream." And he went away and he came back later. He said, "I'm sorry, we've already frittered the banana." So I'm not sure it was the highest class restaurant in Davis.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, of course, you mentioned that you're in the US now, but did you ever consider staying in Hull or nearby after you graduated?
Well, as I say, Diane went off to become a nurse in Sheffield, and I followed on. I went to do a postdoc. And of course, when you're doing a postdoc, you spend half your time looking for permanent jobs. So from that point on, I guess it was my career that sort of was the driving force for our movement. So the only possibility would have been if the brewing industry had taken me in that direction. The nearest it took me was to Burton-on-Trent, and then in due course it actually brought us over to California. So we came in 1999.
Yeah,
so
22 years.
Yeah. So I managed to avoid picking up the accent, I think.
And and that was a tough decision. We had a son who was at university in Sheffield when we actually came over here, and 2 other children over here with us. But he eventually joined us and is settled with children and a good career and things. So it's very, I look back and think it's very odd that we ended up in California of all places.
It was never part of the master plan.
Yeah.
It was the perfect role. I came to become the professor of brewing at the University of California.
We went back about 8 or 9 years ago to the university, and a lot had changed. And I was surprised to see Clemenson Hall had gone, because it's modern. The 2 wings that had been rebuilt, they seem quite modern. But then I realized it was 40 years later, so perhaps they didn't need pulling down. I don't know.
Is there any song that can sum up your relationship and your time at Hull?
Well, I'm not sure there's any particular song, although I mentioned Lindisfarne. They've got and I don't remember the name of the song, but something about sitting on the front.
Fog on the Tyne.
Well, Fog on the Tyne, the album, but sitting on the front seat of a bus.
You and me at the front of the bus,
sitting on whatever it is. So the Fog on the Tyne album, but really, I think. When our son got married, they wanted us to have a song there, and that was "Nights in White Satin" from
Moody Blues.
The Moody Blues.
But also
Nights in White Satin was very romantic.
So 2 albums from Simon and Garfunkel, Wednesday Morning 3 AM and Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. Those 2 albums mean a great deal. But not long ago we went to see the Moody Blues. They were over in California, and we were in a concert, and Diane turned to me and she said, "You're getting older when people wave their walking sticks."
But that's another thing. You only had music on the radio, and at Clemenson Hall you could actually rent out the record player. They had 1 record player for the whole hall, and you were able to rent it out and have it in your room for like 2 hours, and that's when we used to play these albums. It's very strange.
You've been listening to Happy Ever Hull, celebrating our alumni community and their experiences at the University of Hull and beyond. If you want to keep in touch with us and be part of the University of Hull alumni community, drop us an email on alumni@hull.ac.uk or follow us on Facebook and Twitter @HullAlumni.